Artwork is often bought ready-made. The artist makes a piece of sculpture or painting. An art shopper sees it and decides it will go nicely above their couch, let's say, so buys it from the artist, or more likely from a gallery. Commissioned artwork is different. Commissioned work is created specifically for a person or a place. While making any art can be hard work, making commissioned art has very specific challenges. The artist Monica Setziol-Phillips talks about this.
The challenge is in this kind of a commission to somehow incorporate the desires of the committee for the community, speaking for the community, and your own artistic integrity and your own creativity.
Making art is often a private creative experience. Developing a public space, such as a government building, is very much a community activity. Public commissioned artwork is, therefore, both a solitary activity of the artist and, like any governmental activity, a public process. This article is an exploration of how these two contradictory endeavors come together to create a piece of public art. Specifically, this is the story of Monica Setziol-Phillips' creation for the new McMinnville Civic Hall.
This was the first commissioned piece for the city of McMinnville.
In January of 2009, the city of McMinnville began an extensive process to commission a piece of artwork for their new Civic Hall. For the city, the process starts with development of a request for proposals, usually referred to by the initials RFP, and identification of potential artists.
Ken Taylor and the committee did a very interesting thing in collaboration with the City Council. They asked the City Council to state what their feelings, thoughts, emotions about McMinnville were, what was important to them, historically or as public servants. So we had a whole list, several pages of comments from the mayor, the City Council, and some city employees. That formed part of the RFP, the call for proposals, that the Public Arts Committee then sent out to artists.
I kind of let all those mandates that were listed overwhelm me. And I thought, oh my God, how am I ever going to incorporate some of these things? And that was very frustrating.
I can't remember how many proposals we got. Somewhere in the line of maybe 20, 25. From that, we chose 3 proposals that we liked, asked them to prepare a more complete proposal with a potential mock-up, and then went into the second phase of the process. The committee was extended to include city employees and the architects that were associated with the building. We spent a full day working with those 3 artists, asking questions, looking at what their proposals were, giving artists an opportunity to ask their questions. It not only informs their work, but it also creates that relationship between the panel and the artists. And so it becomes a much more real and lively dialogue.
This was the final proposal, and it's 8 panels of varying sizes, and through all but 2 of them, the weaving wanders, and the weaving is kind of representational of the river. There were 2 woods that were mentioned with regard to my proposal. One was teak and the other was Alaska yellow cedar. I had examples of both woods at the final presentation and also of weaving, so they could get some idea of what it would consist of, because it's very hard for people. My work is rather unusual, and it's hard for people to envision.
The 2 other finalists had done quarter-scale mock-ups, which are pretty significant pieces. Monica came in with some very small drawings and a couple of her pieces directly. which was difficult for the group to get a sense of the scale and how it was going to fit in the wall behind the dais.
She really responded not only to the aesthetics of the space, but also was able to incorporate what the city council people had said was important to them in very artistic and subtle ways. It's not a representational kind of piece, but the symbols are there. And those were taken directly from comments that City Council and the mayor made.
The symbols are all related to either community or to the law, government, those kinds of things. This is, of course, representative of the wine country and the wine culture, this city of McMinnville. And then this, I was looking for symbols of knowledge, and I discovered that the hazelnut is a symbol for knowledge. This is the rune for house, and this is the Oriental symbol for the wheel of justice. This is another rune, and this is the rune for mankind. And then this is the symbol, the sunflowers become the symbol of the ecology movement. And the last one is the Tao, which is from the Tao Te Ching, and is a symbol for peace.
Her maquette was quite small, didn't really give novices to public art on the committee a sense of what the scope would be.
We broke for lunch after Monica's piece, and I went over to the whiteboard and sort of sketched out her piece roughly in full size so that the committee could get a sense that this was going to be much larger, would have a sort of broader impact and whatnot. Looking at the space, the main sort of council chamber space, and wanting to really give where the council sat or where the judge sat, because it functions both as a council chamber and a courtroom, but wanting to give real authority to that position within the room. We knew we wanted a large backdrop of some kind there, whether it was architectural or more artistic or whatnot.
Public commissions tend to be more specific than I think private ones. You're almost always working with a committee, and of course people on committees have ideas. And that's good because it is going in a public space, so you want that input.
Artists are working from a written statement. When they have a chance to talk to different people, it really colors and informs what their knowledge about the intentions and the expectations are in a way other than just reading from a cold RFP, I think. And it really gave us a sense, too, of how the artist would respond. Was this an artist who was very firm in what they wanted, and it's my way or not? Or were they open to considering other kinds of things? And I think the same for the artist, to understand that the committee was really seeking a good piece of work that would stand the test of time, and that if they didn't articulate it perfectly, that they really saw it as a partnership between the artist and the community as a whole, as represented by the people who were making the decision.
Commissions come, I think, creatively from a different place inside you than when you're just straight creating something. And when you're doing something that isn't geared for a specific site or for somebody's color preferences, then it probably does come from a deeper place inside you, because the initiation of the process is more internal. I think with a commission it can go deeper, but it maybe is not initially, that depth is not there. That kind of gets added in as you go along.
An artist works in big ideas and concepts, but to successfully create, extensive craft knowledge is essential. Monica talks about the weaving craft.
I came upon weaving completely serendipitously, if that's a word. And that was when I was a senior in college. I had some free time, some free hours that I could do whatever I wanted with to fulfill graduation requirements at the beginning of my senior year. And so I wanted to take either ceramics or weaving, and ceramics didn't fit into my schedule, and weaving did. And so the next thing I knew, I was spending lots of time in the weaving lab. The first step in the process is warping the loom. The warp is what goes on the loom and where the tension is maintained. You can't weave without tension of some kind. The headers are like an eye of a needle, but they're attached to a harness. So that's what enables you to raise, when you raise these harnesses, you raise those threads. The space that you have there, that's your shed, and that's what you pass the yarn through. Think about how they discovered these things. You know, weaving is, some authorities say that weaving is the very oldest craft, that it predates ceramics. And you need to pull, you know, if you're weaving fabric or something very light and airy, you wouldn't be beading like that. But because it's tapestry, and this is, you totally want to cover those warps. So then you have to beat quite hard. And then so you just go back and forth, as you can see here, to let the color area travel, or to introduce a new color, or do whatever you want with the pattern. You'll notice there's this row of twining here and here, and that's there for a specific purpose, because I purposely, somebody asked me, why don't I weave this way on the loom? And I weave this way because it's much more stable, and the warp ends are much more stable. But that gives me all those warp ends to deal with. Because when I cut this off, you know, every single one of those is loose. So each warp end gets half hitched around the next warp end. And then those get put through on the back side, the twining. So this is a kind of raised twining. That's actually a kind that the Navajo used on their loom for a different purpose. But so that way I have a very stable fabric and very stable, those ends aren't going to cause any problem at all. And when I chose the colors for this commission, it was certainly with the space in mind. That it would go well, and because you knew what the colors were going to be in the room. And so this is the colors in the room are pretty subdued. There's nothing bright, and so this will be kind of a perk up to have that nice splash of color going across the wall.
From a design standpoint, there's this idea played throughout of changes in material texture. And so you'll see it on the outside within the brick. The brick is the same color, but in several places it changes from really rough to very smooth. Same thing in the lobby within the texture of the tile and the use of the wood slats versus the smooth wood panel. And so that idea of playing up a very similar color and tone that just changes in texture lets her piece of sculpture sort of fit really well on that back wall that is very plain, very simple, but her carvings sort of stick out and give that sort of relief to that wall.
These are the yarns that are being used in the McMinnville Commission. And as you can see, the wonderful thing about having them, they're too fine to use by themselves. You can combine them in so many different ways. So I want colors to flow into each other. I love seeing how the colors build and grow. It's just a very great privilege to be able to weave.